Long ago, in a world untouched by paved roads or towering skyscrapers, the lands we now know as the Americas were alive with the vibrant presence of various tribes and nations. These peoples were in perfect harmony with the earth, revering every river, tree, and creature as part of a vast, spiritual landscape. For thousands of years, these societies thrived, developing intricate social, spiritual, and ecological systems, reflecting the deep wisdom of their cultures. They looked to the stars for guidance, listened to the winds to understand nature's messages, and celebrated life with song and dance. However, with the arrival of colonizers, much of this knowledge began to fade. But even in the shadow of time's passing, this ancient wisdom still whispers across the land, echoing in the rivers, the mountains, and in the hearts of many. Prepare yourself for a journey through the ages, where the voices of elders and the quiet murmurs of the earth are still alive and powerful. This is the story of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, of respect, harmony, and a deep spiritual connection with nature. A continent of diverse nations. Before borders were drawn by foreign hands, the Americas were a vast and living mosaic. From north to south, countless nations flourished, each with their own languages, traditions, and profound connections with the earth. These lands were not battlegrounds for conquest. They were sacred homelands, nurtured and protected by those who believed the earth did not belong to anyone, but everyone belonged to it. In the heart of central North America, the Lakota followed the great herds of bison, seeing them not just as sustenance, but as symbols of balance and harmony. To the west, the ancient Puebloans built stone cities, gracefully emerging from the mountains, blending architecture and nature as one. Further north, the Haudenosaunee, known as the people of the Longhouse, established one of the world's first democratic systems, a cooperative alliance between 5, later 6, nations, a model of peace and unity. The relationship each nation had with their land was unique, yet shared a common thread of deep reverence. For the Tupi-Guarani in the southern forests, the rivers and mountains carried stories of gods and ancestors, embodying the sacred. The Inuit of the far north demonstrated unparalleled wisdom, thriving in harsh conditions where others saw only desolation. These nations didn't merely survive, they thrived. Extensive trade networks linked distant tribes, enabling the exchange of not just goods, but ideas, knowledge, and traditions. Evidence like Atlantic shells found in the Great Plains and obsidian from the west, discovered in the east, reveals how interconnected these societies were, long before globalization. The most remarkable aspect, though, wasn't their trade or architecture. It was the shared philosophy that intertwined these cultures, a deep respect for the interconnectedness of all life. Governance, wisdom, and leadership. Native American nations were complex societies with intricate governance systems, wisdom, and rituals that preserved harmony within their communities. For them, leadership was not about power, but service to the people, and every decision was made with great care. Take the Haudenosaunee, for instance. Their confederacy, one of the earliest known democratic systems, was built on consensus. The decisions of the Grand Council were made considering their impact on the next 7 generations, ensuring the well-being of both people and the planet for the long term. This system was designed to avoid tyranny and promote cooperation. The Hopi, from the arid Southwest, also demonstrated unique governance structures rooted in spirituality. Here, leadership came from a council of elders who provided guidance informed by the land and the sacred signs in nature. For the Hopi, a leader wasn't chosen. They were recognized for fulfilling a sacred duty to the people and the earth. Meanwhile, in the Great Plains, the Lakota lived in smaller bands, with leaders selected based on merit, particularly in times of war or collective hunts. Their ability to adapt to changing seasons and environments was one of their greatest strengths, reflecting both wisdom and flexibility in their organization. In the Northwest, peoples like the Tlingit and Haida built social structures based on clan hierarchies. Their potlatches, the elaborate feasts, were much more than social gatherings. These were ceremonial acts that reaffirmed alliances, promoted generosity, and reminded people of their shared responsibility to both their communities and the wider world. Through all of these systems, there was a singular guiding principle: respect for interdependence and cooperation. Every tribe member had a place and responsibility. No voice was too small, no contribution insignificant. These nations valued collective wisdom, with decisions often emerging from debates and discussions that reflected both spiritual and practical considerations. Spirituality and connection to the earth. The spiritual practices of Native American peoples were not isolated rituals, but deeply connected to their relationship with the earth and the greater cosmos. To them, the world was a living, sacred entity, where every mountain, river, animal, and person was part of a unified spirit. This view permeated their daily lives, guiding everything from rituals to agriculture to governance. For the Lakota, their spirituality centered on the concept of Wakantanka, or the Great Spirit. They believed this divine energy flowed through all things, uniting them in a harmonious cosmic balance. Rituals like the sun dance, where participants danced for hours in devotion, served to reconnect them with the Earth's natural cycles and to the spiritual order that governed the universe. Similarly, the Hopi saw themselves as guardians of balance between the physical and spiritual realms. Through their ceremonies conducted by the Kachinas, spirit beings representing different aspects of nature, they invoked rain, prosperity, and harmony. For the Hopi, spirituality wasn't just a part of life. It was a guiding force in everything they did, shaping their agriculture, social interactions, and even their governance. Far to the south, the Tupi-Guarani people believed the forest itself was imbued with spiritual significance. Their rituals, guided by sacred plants like ayahuasca, allowed them to transcend the ordinary world and communicate directly with the gods and spirits of nature. In these visions, they found guidance for their people, ensuring the health of both body and soul. In the Northwest, the Haida people expressed their spirituality through the art of carving totem poles, each figure on the poles a living story, symbolizing the relationship between the people and their environment. These creations weren't merely artistic expressions. They represented their belief systems, their past, and their deep connection to the forces of nature. Through these practices, spirituality in Native American cultures was embedded in everyday life. Each act, whether planting seeds, hunting, or even lighting a fire, was seen as sacred. Prayers were offered before a hunt to thank the spirit of the animal. Songs were sung to the land to ask for its blessing. The philosophy of interdependence. At the core of Native American worldviews was the philosophy of interdependence. They saw all living beings as connected in an intricate web of relationships, where every action rippled out to affect the whole. Humans were not separate from nature. They were part of it. Everything, from animals to plants to the earth itself, had a role to play in the harmony of life, and disrupting that balance would lead to consequences that rippled across all existence. Among the Lakota, this philosophy was embodied in the phrase mitakuye oyasin, or all my relations. This concept extended far beyond human beings to encompass every part of the natural world: the trees, the winds, the bison, and the rivers. For the Lakota, every form of life, no matter how small, was a relative, deserving of respect and reverence. When they hunted, they did so with gratitude, using every part of the animal and never taking more than was needed. The Hopi, living in one of the harshest climates of the Americas, had a profound understanding of their dependence on water and the land. Their agricultural practices, formed around ritual offerings and invocations to the forces of nature, honored the sacred balance that sustained them. For the Hopi, survival wasn't just about human effort. It was about their relationship with the earth and the spiritual forces that governed it. Their practices of conservation and mindful resource management demonstrate a deep understanding of interdependence with the environment. This web of interdependence also stretched across generations. For many Native American cultures, time wasn't linear but cyclical. Ancestors lived on through the stories, traditions, and rituals passed down through generations. Decisions made in the present were guided by their impacts on future generations, a profound sense of responsibility toward those yet to come. The Iroquois Confederacy famously operated with the guiding principle of considering the impact of every decision on the next 7 generations. The return to wisdom. The Native American way of life holds profound lessons for us all, particularly in today's world. Although many traditions were threatened or lost, the heart of their wisdom still beats in various movements dedicated to environmental justice, indigenous rights, and sustainability. In the face of colonization and decades of cultural suppression, these people have continuously sought to protect their identity, revitalize their practices, and share their knowledge with the world. Their journey has not been easy, but it shows the resilience and power of spirit to overcome even the greatest adversities. Consider the words of the Hopi, whose ancestors have passed down prophecies about the survival of humanity. They warn us that we must return to the spiritual connection between humans and nature. They call it the time of Koya Aniskatsi, the crazy life, a way of living disconnected from the earth and one another. We're now living through it, an era of disconnection and environmental destruction. But the Hopi believe we can restore balance, not by going backwards, but by moving forward with the lessons of the past in our hearts. Their prophecies, rooted in reverence for life's interdependence, serve as a timeless reminder that all life, humans, animals, plants, and the land itself, is interconnected, and true peace will only come when we recognize and honor that relationship. What if we allowed ourselves to view the earth as a sacred entity rather than simply a resource? What if we began to make decisions with the perspective of 7 generations, thinking of those who will walk this earth after us? The influence of Native American wisdom is clearer now than ever, calling us to embrace spirituality, live with gratitude, and reconnect with the natural world around us. The Modern Resurgence. As time passed and Western civilization expanded across the land, much was lost. But in recent years, there's been a growing resurgence of indigenous knowledge and traditions. Many Native American communities have fought tirelessly to reclaim their cultural heritage and teachings, advocating for the protection of sacred sites, language revitalization, and a deepened spiritual relationship with the earth. These efforts not only ensure the survival of an ancient culture but offer valuable lessons to modern society. Some tribes are reconnecting with ancient agricultural practices, understanding that working in harmony with nature is key to sustaining the land and ensuring future generations can live in balance. Their approaches to land management, such as controlled burns and permaculture, are being reconsidered by environmentalists worldwide who seek sustainable practices for modern ecosystems. More importantly, many indigenous people are reclaiming their voice in the political arena, demanding rights and recognition. They're asserting that their spirituality, practices, and worldviews have much to offer when it comes to addressing current global crises, from climate change to social injustice. For example, in 2020, indigenous movements like Idle No More in Canada and Standing Rock in the U.S. drew attention to the corporate greed and disregard for the sacredness of land. The protection of water and land is central to indigenous belief systems, and these movements sparked worldwide demonstrations in solidarity. The true power of indigenous wisdom is that it encourages a holistic view of life. The struggle to protect sacred lands is not only about stopping the destruction of environments, but also about reclaiming dignity, respect, and sovereignty over one's cultural narrative. Reviving lost wisdom for the future. As we look to the future, we are faced with pressing challenges, many of which reflect the consequences of overexploitation of the earth. It is increasingly clear that the modern worldview of separation from nature, seeing it as a resource to dominate, has brought us to a tipping point. But perhaps the answer to these crises is rooted in the wisdom of those who once lived in harmony with the land. The stories, philosophies, and practices that were nearly lost have always held valuable insights. Indigenous knowledge isn't static or backward. It's timeless and urgently relevant today. These traditions offer us profound lessons on interdependence, sustainable living, and how to truly respect our planet. It's no surprise that these ancient practices have begun to attract attention from people across the globe. Universities and research centers are increasingly recognizing the value of working with indigenous communities to find sustainable solutions. For instance, fire management techniques used by Native American tribes for centuries are being implemented in modern-day wildfire management efforts. Some agricultural models, like the Three Sisters method practiced by the Iroquois, growing corn, beans, and squash together in a mutualistic system, are helping to redefine how we view food production. Such methods prioritize biodiversity and ecological harmony, challenging modern agriculture's one-size-fits-all mentality. Even in the world of modern spirituality, indigenous wisdom is making its way into contemporary teachings. The importance of respect for the natural world, deep mindfulness, and living in alignment with the Earth's rhythms have become essential themes for movements dedicated to spiritual awakening and environmental stewardship. This return to old ways isn't just nostalgia for the past. It's a conscious reclaiming of teachings that resonate deeply with the needs of the present. By reconnecting with the wisdom of those who came before, we find innovative and sustainable solutions for tomorrow. The power of ancestral teachings. One of the most profound gifts that the Native American philosophies offer is their deep sense of responsibility toward future generations. The wisdom shared by elders emphasizes that decisions made today affect not just our present lives, but the lives of all beings, human and non-human, for centuries to come. This perspective encourages long-term thinking, not just immediate gratification, and it challenges modern practices that prioritize short-term profits over the sustainability of life. In their communities, there was no such thing as mindlessly consuming. Everything had a purpose, and each individual knew their role within the greater cosmic balance. Hunting, farming, and gathering were all done with intention and respect, ensuring that future generations would be able to carry on these practices in harmony with the environment. This principle goes beyond material resources. For the Lakota, Hopi, and others, spirituality, knowledge, and tradition were equally as important to preserve. Indigenous teachings about connection to the earth, honoring the spirit of all beings, and recognizing the sacredness of the land are messages that urgently need to be heard today. More than ever, there is a need to honor the earth as a living, sacred entity that deserves not just our respect, but our devotion. We cannot simply take from the land without giving back, as it was never meant to be a one-way relationship. Native traditions offer a model of reciprocity, a mutual exchange between humans and the land, where gratitude is expressed through ceremonies, prayers, and the careful use of natural resources. These teachings underscore the idea that our environmental crisis isn't just a series of disconnected events: wildfires, floods, pollution, deforestation. Instead, it's a symptom of a deeper systemic disconnect from the natural world and a lack of spiritual awareness that ties us to the land. To heal this rift, we must reconnect with the core teachings of balance, respect, and interdependence.